Is Dave Doeren the most underrated coach in America? That is the topic of discussion today on Somehow We Manage. As I am joined yet again by Mr. Jeff Gravley, former WRL broadcaster and now the Director of Content Strategy at NC State. We're going to talk about Dave Doeren and the program that he's built, how he's been able to consistently win games and consistently beat the Tar Heels as he did just a couple of days ago, and this amazing turnaround that he's had this year, winning 9 games with the opportunity to win their 10th with the bowl game coming up. So don't go anywhere, folks. You're not going to want to miss this episode. We have another great episode, another great guest, and let us know what you think in the comments. Joining me now on Somehow We Manage is the man, the myth, the legend, my friend and yours, Mr. Jeff Gravley. Jeff, how are you, sir?
Good to see you, Kagan, and you always outdress me. Always.
Well, you got this like red pinstripe thing going on. What is that?
That's an Adidas, of course. You wore what you wore to work, and I wore what I wore to work. Quite a difference.
Yeah,
I used to have to wear the suits. Now I can wear a hoodie.
I've worked in athletics before. I mean, there were days when that was the dress code, sort of, you had to wear your team gear and whatnot. So, I mean,
Right.
That just brings up a question already. I mean, is that sort of what is the dress code like for you now? Because everybody knows you were a WRL guy. Now you're with NC State with your alma mater. So, in your new role, what does the dress code look like?
Well, during the summer it's shorts, and during the winter it's jeans.
But are you okay? Are you a t-shirt guy? Are you wearing just a regular whatever you'd call it, dry fit shirt? I mean,
yeah, I'll do that. But if I really need to look nice that day, I'll wear a collared shirt.
Okay, so just
but today was kind of one of those sit in the suite and edit all day, and I knew I wouldn't be around a lot of people, so I was like, it's going to be a hoodie day. Okay. Now tomorrow, Wednesday, when the women are playing, and I'll be at that game, I will not be wearing a hoodie. I'll be wearing at least something that looks a little bit more business casual, so to speak.
Well, what is the situation where you break out the suit? Does that happen very often anymore?
Got special events, might be hosting an event. I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to host NIL fundraiser for men's and women's basketball. That they talked to the 1974 team of David Thompson, Monty Tao, Tommy Burleson, and Phil Spence. We had DJ Burns on with Casey Morcell, Sanaya Rivers, and Madison Hayes. They were all decked out, so I'm like, I got to wear a sport coat at least. Didn't have to wear a tie, but I did have to break out the sport coat.
Yeah, excellent event, and the auctioneer that night did a pretty good job too.
Yes, the auctioneer did a fantastic job,
and he had
couldn't have been better.
He had a good looking assistant with him too. But if you know, you know.
That blew me away when I saw you there, and then you told me, "Yeah, I know the auctioneer." Well, yeah, you know the auctioneer. You did a great job. He did a great job. That was a great night, though.
No,
a lot of talent in that room. Holy cow!
You could have made a fine intramural team with some of those guys in there.
Exactly. Yes.
No, it was awesome. So tell me, how was your Thanksgiving? How was your holiday? Have you recovered?
That's a great way to put it, because you stretch your stomach out and then you've got to recover from that, or at least that's my excuse. So yeah, we had a great Thanksgiving. Got to go to my mom's in Oxford with my wife, and then we came back here on Friday, and our daughter and her fiance came by here, and they went to the game on Saturday, and I went to the game on Saturday, and my wife babysat 2 golden retrievers. And watched the game. So that was what we all got to do on Thanksgiving weekend.
See, that's a beautiful segue there, Jeff. I didn't even have to bring it up. That's that media training right there. See, beautiful. The Wolfpack get a huge win over the guys down the road. I mean, a lot of storylines coming into this thing, and I think State fans, they were. I was worried about this game. You think about it's Drake May's last game, it's Peyton Wilson's last game. You drove the flag in their field last year. They're going to come in hot. State's won 5 games in a row. There's so many things. My mind was, I was thinking State's going to come into this thing too confident. Carolina's lost, I don't know, it was 2 or 3. I think they lost 2 of their last 3. They lost a heartbreaker at Clemson the week before.
Yep.
I mean, there were a lot of things going on. I'm saying State's going to be too aggressive. Drake May's going to lob one right over the middle. It's going to be over early in the game, But you tell me, I mean, what are your initial reactions following that win for NC State?
Looking at the way NC State controlled that game from start to finish, I think you saw who the most prepared team and who the most physical team was on the field that night were the guys in the red jerseys. Look, it is hard to play a senior night. We've seen senior nights get blown up. It did last year against Boston College.
Yes.
Phillip Rivers' last game at Carter-Finley Stadium was a loss to Maryland, a team that he never beat during his career. So those are hard games to play. So much emotion is put into it. And then you put on top of that, you're playing your rival, North Carolina, the final regular season game at night at Carter-Finley Stadium. There were all kind of elements in that one that would lead an NC State fan to feel a little bit uneasy. But I think it was total domination from start to finish. Yeah, there was an opportunity for North Carolina to cut it to 12. I was like, if that happens, this is really going to get interesting. But from the onset, that offense was phenomenal. I mean, how many times can you say your offense scored on 8 straight possessions? 8 straight. Really? From the get-go. Your defense created turnovers again. 10 straight games with an interception, forced a fumble. They were just hitting people all over the place. So I think from start to finish, it was a dominating game for NC State, and it's caused a lot of angst among the Tar Heel Nation, among Tar Heel fans, and really that's what the rivalry is about. It's between the fans.
Yes.
I had an older gentleman the week of the game. He came up to me and he goes, I really hate this week. It drives me crazy. I get so nervous. I got to go to the coffee shop and hear it. I got to go to church and hear about it if we lose. I got to go to everywhere and hear about it if we lose. I said, but what about if you win the game? Then you've got all the bragging rights at the coffee shop and at church and at the men's circle. I said, plus you've won the last 2 games. Why not make it 3 in a row? So I thought about him after the game, because that's where if you're a fan, you don't want to hear it from the other fan base. You don't want to see it on social media. You don't want to hear it among your circle of friends that pull for the other team. Players, there's a bit of rivalry between the schools, but I think it's even more tense between the fan bases because it's gone on for so long. And then you see players that have played in this rival game. Once they're outside of it, then they become those chirping fans that you'll see on social media or even more so in person. So that's what makes it a really good rivalry. I think it's a very underrated rivalry in the country, but it certainly is a hot one here in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, it is. And you know, a lot is made about State Carolina. Some people say it's not a rivalry. That's major crap, in my opinion. Pardon the French. And especially in football. I mean, it's just in the state of North Carolina, and I think any real true diehard Carolina fan, they will tell you straight up, State is the biggest game of the year. I don't care how good Duke is. It's the biggest game of the year. And I remember I had a lot of close friends who are Carolina fans, and I remember talking before this game, and they're like, man, I'm nervous about this one. I don't know. We're limping into this one, you know. But yeah, it's a huge game, and it deserves way more respect than it gets nationally. But, you know, here in the state of North Carolina, as I said, it's a very big deal. And I think, you know, you talked about people are frustrated right now. And in the days following this game, you know, the media's been after Mack Brown. Mack Brown was he was distraught after that game in his post-game press conference. I mean, he said, look, my team we were not the most physical team. We were not prepared. And so, this episode's about Dave Doeren and what he's built at NC State, right? This consistent machine he's built at NC State. But when you're talking about this Carolina game that happened just a couple of days ago, people have been drawing these comparisons between the two head coaches. And it's going to happen. If you're a coach at NC State or Carolina, you're going to be compared to the two. What do you think Dave Doeren is doing that Mack Brown is not? Why do you think he continually wins this game? Why do you think he's consistently winning 9 games? He's ranked most of the time. And Carolina, it is what it is. They're getting top tier talent and falling short year after year. What do you think the difference between the two head coaches is? What's Dave doing right?
You know what I think Dave has done from the very moment he got to NC State was he wanted to build a culture. And you hear that word a lot, and I've asked him a lot about it. What is your culture? He starts with hard, tough together, hands in the dirt. He talks about being more physical, outworking people. He talks about building a family atmosphere where each player, each person on the staff, each person in that Murphy Center building that's associated with football feels like a part of his family. And he's built the program that way. That has not changed. Rosters can change, injuries can happen, transfers can happen, guys pulling out early for a red shirt can happen, but those things will not change what Dave feels like is the culture of the football team. And that's the one constant through all of these years that he's carried with him. And I think it's one of the big reasons why he has found some consistency here at NC State and why he is the winningest all-time coach in NC State football history. Look, the guy that he passed, Earl Edwards, and this is nothing against Coach Edwards because he was a great coach, but he had his win total in 17 years, 193 games. Dave did his surpassing Earl Edwards' record in 11 years and 135 games. So I think that puts in perspective a little bit of what Dave's been able to do from a coaching standpoint. I think this is one of his best years of coaching based on all of the turbulence and things that happened that really started last year. I would put in a 2-year window, kind of all the adjustments that Dave had to make on the fly, evaluations. Last year it was you play 4 quarterbacks because of injuries and you still win 8 games. This year it's you bring in a new offensive coordinator and the quarterback that he had with him at Virginia that produced magic, and everybody thought right away that the magic dust was going to happen and Brennan Armstrong and Robert and I were going to dial up this offense that's going to score 40 or 50 a game. Well, it didn't happen that way right off the bat. It took them a while to figure out, A, what kind of offense could they be, and B, over the weeks, the first few weeks, you saw that your best threat on offense was a true freshman in KC Concepcion. So if you're Robert and I, how much do you give a true freshman? And that's something that Coach Doeren has said several times to us on the radio show is KC is not your typical freshman. And he's not talking about from a physical standpoint. He's talking about the guy's mental capacity to absorb football. He knows so much about football. He can do so many things. And they started to use him as a weapon. And I think that's, you know, everybody points to the Duke game and the disappointment of that. And I was on the sideline for that game. And I can tell you, that did not look like the NC State team. It did not look like the NC State program that Coach Doeren takes so much pride in. They were physically whipped and mentally whipped that whole game. They had no focus. They had no discipline. And that was very disturbing to Coach Doeren. And he went in after that and really made a ton of changes.
Yeah, no, amazing turnaround when you really think about it. And we'll talk more about, you know, this season in particular. But, you know, you mentioned Coach Edwards and you compared Coach Doeren to him. You know, one thing, Earl Edwards, I mean, compare the ACC now to what it was back then. He didn't have to compete against Florida State and Clemson and even programs like Louisville and Wake Forest who've seen success. I mean, think about it. The year Coach Doeren came in, Florida State won a national championship. They were coming, you know, this was sort of the end of their dynasty, you know, before they got things rolling again. And immediately after that, Dabo Swinney, you know, starts his dynasty, and he could never quite get over that hump. And it's sort of a similar thing to basketball because people say, oh, why can't you beat Duke and Carolina more? Well, who does beat Duke and Carolina? I mean, you know, it's kind of like the old Herb Sendek thing, you know. I mean, but when you look at the stats, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, you may know, I don't know, but you compare who's won the most games over the last 10, you know, 15-ish years. Dave Doeren's right there below, you know, Clemson and Florida State, maybe Miami, I don't know, but he's in that top 3 or 4. I know he is.
Yep.
I don't have the numbers in front of me. So this leads me into this, and I have this conversation with people all day, and I do think State fans are coming around to this, especially last year. Like, how are they changing their expectations when it comes to football? Because I think, and this is the whole 9-win thing, you've won 9 games yet again. If you win 9 games, if you can, whether or not you win your bowl game, doesn't really matter. If you win 9 games, if you can finish ranked or, you know, be ranked around the last, you know, part of the season, you're one of the top 25, 30-ish programs in the country, and you beat Carolina. That's a great year. I don't care what anybody says. Now there's a lot of, he's not gotten that 10th win yet. And yeah, there were a lot of opportunities to do so. I get it. That's frustrated me too. He hasn't gotten that ACC championship, but when you had to beat Clemson year in and year out, was he ever really going to get there? You know, and I know he's had his chances, but still, I just, you know, I think when you really look at things from a big picture perspective, and the fact that he's won 8-9 games consistently throughout the 2019 season, that was just an outlier with this injuries and everything. Yep. But 2017 to now, Their lowest win total has been 8. How many programs can say that? I mean, really. And there again, compare them to North Carolina, compare them to Mac Brown, who's up and down, and they've never really quite reached their potential. State reaches their potential.
Right.
Say what you want. And, there were years like, I think about 2017 when you had so much talent. And, yeah, you probably could have made the ACC championship. 21, you probably could have won 10, 11 games. I get it. But you won 9, you beat Carolina, you finished, you were ranked most of the year. Like, that's good. And I think if you can do that consistently, then there's hope. There's hopes to get that 10th win. If you can do that, there's hope to make that ACC championship. But I can tell you, it sure beats the alternative. People love to talk about Chuck Amato, and we all love Chuck. He built NC State football up to what it is today. But Chuck Amato had the high and then had a lot of lows. There was a lot of inconsistency there. The level of consistency at NC State right now is unbelievable. But you tell me, is the 9-win scenario, I mean, is that fair to you?
Hey, if folks get tired of winning 9 football games a year, man, you better find another sport to root for or whatever, because you're right. 4 of the last 7 years, they get 9 wins. I mean, that's just unheard of. And no, they haven't won the ACC championship since 1978. Everybody knows that, and that's the frustration. But I would rather try to operate from a level of consistency, like you said, where you don't have as much room to reach. You don't have that much room to climb to get to that championship level. Whereas if you're constantly up and down, you're hot and cold, you don't know what kind of consistency you'll ever have. And I think you have a better chance to try to strike for a championship if you're at least in the upper echelon of the ACC. The other thing too is, the game that sticks in their craw this year is the Louisville game. I mean, you hold Louisville to 13 points, you only score 10, and that's when the wheels started to turn. All right, we got to make some offensive changes because our defense is playing their rear ends off. You only give up 13 points to Louisville, and I think that started the evaluation process, and that's when you saw the change. Dave was looking for a spark, and he moved to MJ Morris. The other thing that I respect and have a lot of respect about Dave about is he's not afraid to make the tough decisions, whether it's before a season or during a season. You mentioned back in 2019 when they went 4-8, he made some drastic coaching changes, including his defensive coordinator, who had been there for a long time. He made some other staff changes as well. You look at this year when he had to make the change to go to MJ Morris and then somehow try to put things back together when MJ decided after the Miami game that he was going to redshirt. So then you bring back Brennan Armstrong, who I just consistently call BA. You bring him back, and what does he do? Finishes the season 3-0 without an interception, without a turnover, throwing for 6 touchdowns, rushing for 3 touchdowns. So he knows how to push the right buttons at times. And he admits sometimes he gets it wrong, and that's just part of coaching. But I think his willingness to make tough decisions and have tough conversations with people, he does that with his players year in and year out, group, individually, whatever. He's not afraid to have the tough conversation with his players because he believes in honesty and brutal honesty. They're 2 different levels of honesty. And I think that's one of Dave's biggest attributes is he's not afraid to have brutal, honest conversations and challenge people and ask them to raise their level. To me, the best coaches are the ones that can squeeze more out of you than you think you have. And Dave has certainly done that over his 11 years here at NC State.
There are a few things I want to unpack about what you just said. Number one, everybody, I think most State fans saw the tweet. I think it was 2 weeks ago. They said at the time there were 4, but Clemson won last week. So now there are 5 teams who've won 8+ over the last 4 years.
Yep.
Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame. Stop right there. That's elite company. That is elite company. And NC State's the 5th.
There you go.
That's all you need to say right there.
Right.
And it's like we've said all along, you haven't quite reached that mountaintop, but you can never, ever argue with that level of consistency. And what do you have to compare to? I think Carolina fans and State fans are guilty of this too for whatever reason, but Carolina fans are a little spoiled because they competed at a high level in all other sports. And I think they expect that it should be that way in football. And that's fair, that they think that way, that's fine. But as an NC State fan, look, we ignore the fact that we've won double digits. We have a double-digit season in football once, in school history once. And there have been a lot of those 9-win teams, and 9 wins meant a little bit more back in the day, but still, you can what would you rather have, Tom O'Brien? I mean, what really would you have? Like I said, I do think state fans are coming around, especially after this year, after seeing, the turnaround after all that this team went through. I do think state fans are coming around.
I think, you brought up the word underrated. Is Dave Doeren underrated? I don't know if he is or not, but I do know that he's underappreciated.
There you go.
And I think, but whether it's by his own fan base, whether it's by college football or whatever, but I think this year he gained a lot of traction nationally with what he's been able to do over the last 2 years. And I certainly think there are more fans that are starting to get in Dave's corner, so to speak. Really, when you have everybody pulling in the same direction, you can get a lot more done. I think, hearing fans boo players like Brennan Armstrong, and you can say all you want, they were booing the coach's play calling, hogwash. I can tell you what it was perceived as by the group of players and coaches is you were booing Brennan Armstrong. And Dave takes that personally. The program takes that personally. That locker room took it personally. And Brennan Armstrong did. So it was a wonderful thing Saturday night when the next to the last person called out on senior day was Brennan Armstrong, and he got a great ovation. And the last guy called out for senior day was number 11, Peyton Wilson. And you couldn't even hear the PA announcer get through the announcement before all the noise just drowned out everything else. A well-deserved ovation for a guy that's poured his heart and his soul into the program.
There's 2 guys, and Casey Concepcion is on his way, and he announced today that he'll be coming back, which is huge news for NC State. A lot of state fans were worried about it. Peyton Wilson, what more can you say? Somebody told me during the Louisville game, and I hadn't quite thought about it up to that point, but it hasn't left my mind since. They pointed up to the Ring of Honor below Town Bank Center. I guess that's why I can't remember. Isn't that where your office is?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Town Bank Center, the press box up there.
Yeah.
And they said he's going to be up there in a year or two. And I was like, I hadn't thought about it, but he really has. And Peyton has competed at that level his whole time at NC State. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. He was top 5 in the country in tackles before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he's competed at an elite level, but he's been healthy this year. And
That's
people really got to see. And I think he stepped up as a leader. He really took it upon himself to be the guy. And like you said, when the fans booed Brennan Armstrong, Peyton Wilson made it known. He's like, that's not going to fly. That's not who we are.
No.
And he just, the all ACC selections came out today, and I saw he received the most votes. That is deserved. He honestly, in my book, should be the player of the year. I don't think he will be because Jordan Travis is an offensive player, and that's just the way it goes.
I agree.
But the fact that he received the most votes shows coaches, players, the media, when they watch NC State play, when they look around the conference, they say, he's the guy. That's the guy you look at and you're like, wow. But no, I mean, what more can you say about him? And I'm going to get into this topic of recruiting at NC State, and Peyton Wilson's a big part of that. But Brennan Armstrong, I think after the game Saturday, I think he has achieved he's not legend status because he's only played 1 year. He doesn't put these crazy numbers together. Right. But I think he's achieved hero status. NC State fans will never forget Brennan Armstrong. And it's sad that he was booed early in the year because he's an NC State guy, and I think State fans have realized that now. I mean, he is the personification of hard, tough together. I mean, he's that guy. You saw him playing with a broken rib the other night.
Exactly.
And
he didn't throw a ball all week last week. He couldn't.
Yes.
I mean, in practice, he would drop back, but then there was another player standing right there that would actually throw the ball. And so one of the toughest guys you could ever want. And the way he ran the football all year long, obviously this past week he had to slide more because of his injury, but he was still out there throwing darts. That's the best passing game he's had all year long, a week where he couldn't throw a football in practice. So that goes to show practice is overrated. I'm just kidding. It's not. You got to practice. But, I mean, yeah. And you mentioned the all-conference thing. Here's another reason why this is one of Dave Doeren's best coaching jobs. One player on the first team All ACC team.
Yes.
Peyton Wilson. One player on the second team, KC Concepcion. 2 players on the third team, Anthony Belton, Aiden White. A total of 4 players on the first, second, or third All ACC team, compared to the Florida States, compared to the Louisvilles. I mean, that right there should be a vote of confidence for Dave Doeren in the year that he's done. And as far as from him and his entire staff, really, he will always talk about the value of his staff. And I see that all the time. They are constantly talking in communication, in one office, out another, running ideas by each other. He said after the Duke game, Dave said he got home that night and watched the game and came up with this yellow pad, 3 pages of notes that he had to get answers to. And a lot of it had to do with the offense. And he went in and he made the decisions that needed to be made. And one of the decisions was, all right, guys, we're going to huddle up from now on. I want to huddle up. I want our guys to look at each other. I want them to see each other's face, communicate. It will hide a little bit longer what we're trying to do as far as formations. We can't let defenses just dig their cleats in and come after us. And then the other thing he's told Robert and I, he says, look, man, have as much fun as you want with these motions. We need more eye candy out there. We need KC in motion. We need Brennan in motion. We need to split out let's split out some offensive line, which we saw. We saw it against North Carolina.
Yes.
That resulted in the KC touchdown. So those are the kind of things that you think, wow, that's pretty drastic. And they were. But Dave had to have the gumption to make those decisions, and his staff had to have the belief in those decisions to actually execute them. And then that was handed off to the players. So that's why I think this has been one of the best jobs Dave's ever done. And
you talk about his staff. I think that's another reason why Dave Doeren is underappreciated. When you think about the guys that have come through NC State, and I've got some names written down here. Okay, let's talk about Matt Canada early on. He was just let go by the Steelers, of course, but an NFL offensive coordinator. Okay, Eddie Faulkner, who's now the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. Okay. Des Kitchings, who's the offensive coordinator at Virginia, another Power 5 school. Dwayne Ledford, who was an offensive coordinator at Louisville, Power 5. Tim Beck, who's now a head coach in Division I football. And then I think the shining example is Eli Drinkwitz, who is sort of the media darling right now, but he was an offensive coordinator at NC State. So you see, guys want to coach for him. Guys want to be a part of what Dave Doeren is building. And then you see them going on to have successful careers, making moves, becoming offensive coordinators, becoming head coaches. So that's another thing that Dave Doeren is doing well. You talk about this culture. That's the word everybody likes to use. People want to be a part of what Dave Doeren is building at NC State.
There's no doubt about it. And you see it with, with him being able to get Robert and I and Garrett Toujay in this year. That's a pretty good package deal, because 2 of your most critical, several of your 2 coordinators are your 2 most critical, but then your offensive and defensive line coaches better be really good. And it took a while for the offensive line to kind of settle in. I think the injury to Dylan McMahon kind of messed up the apple cart, so to speak. But once they got that back together, they made another move. They said, okay, well, we're going to move Tim McKay into right guard, and we're going to bring in Jacarius Peak, who had been playing a little bit of tight end and in their heavy package as well. He was basically wearing 2 jerseys. And, he says, we're going to make him our right tackle. And just that kind of move just is an amazing thing that produced and helped. There was stability along the offensive line. We saw better pass protection. We saw a more effective run game. The combination of your line becoming more solidified and the eye candy and the execution and some of the plays they came up with, it was pretty incredible to see that offense get into gear finally, because for the most part, the defense carried the team for most of the year. But I think starting with Virginia Tech, that's when the offense kind of picked up the tab, and they continued to play well against North Carolina. Now, I will say this, they thought that they could throw the ball against North Carolina. That's why they were a little concerned that Brennan, how injured is he? Is he sore? Is he injured? Is he going to be able to play? Because they felt like they could throw the football against North Carolina, and there you go. So most yards he's passed all season long comes against North Carolina, and it was a very effective plan for them to do.
And I think you see, over the last 5 games, you see a team that got better and better
Mhm.
and better. And I think it culminates in that UNC game. I mean, you see Brennan Armstrong have his best game in an NC State uniform. We've talked a lot about coaching, right? The coaching staff, what Doeren has done as a coach. But at the end of the day, you and I know it's not about the X's and O's. It's about the what? It's about the Johnnies and the Joes. And, like we said, Dave Doeren does not recruit necessarily at a high level. I mean, not compared to, let's say Mac Brown or whoever. I've got it written down right here. Every one of his recruiting classes, 59, 34, 31, 50, 53, 26, and 28. Those are the 2 highest. 43, 38, 72, 49. And this current class is at 31. So there's a few of those in there where you're able to slip in some top tier talent, some of those 4 stars, but not amazing, right? I mean, not out of this world. So there again, it shows that he's developing talent, obviously. But those few guys that were able to slip through the cracks, or maybe that they were able to develop, because there were a lot of those guys that they were. Bradley Chubb was not highly recruited, and there have been a lot of those guys. But then you look at a kid like Peyton Wilson, who a lot of schools wanted. He was committed to Carolina at first, and they got him to come back, or they got him to flip to NC State.
I'm glad you brought up Bradley Chubb, because that brought back, you were running down the coaches from the Dave Doeren coaching tree. A guy who coached Bradley Chubb on the defensive line, Ryan Nielsen, is the defensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons now.
There you go. And there's
another one that you add to the list, because I knew there was another one, and I could see his face. And when you mentioned Bradley Chubb, I'm like, that's right, that's him. So yeah, you know what? Recruiting rankings are great for December and February, but I would rather win on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday than on recruiting day. I've never, ever, I understand why people get so excited about recruiting, because it is the breath of fresh air that you think is going to come in and cleanse whatever's been ailing you in your program. Whether it's a big problem or maybe just a little problem, you need this one guy. Boy, if we could get X, Y, or Z, we're going to go compete for the national championship. And you know what? I think Dave, Coach Thunder, and strength and conditioning, the entire staff truly believe that this is a program of development. When you come here, we develop you, the whole person, the football player, from a physical and mental standpoint, from a nutritional standpoint, from a health standpoint, from an academic standpoint, from a social standpoint. And so they're trying to build complete people, young men, and to become men. And, that may sound corny or trite, but that is a core value of Dave Doeren's football program. And I don't think you can poo-poo it when you look at the success that they've had putting guys in the NFL. I mean, holy cow, you turn on the games whenever, there's always a state guy or 2 or 3 in there, always. And so I think that's a part of a program. Developing a full program is you win games, you graduate guys, you keep guys out of trouble. Some will go to the NFL, some will go on to be successful business people, some will go into coaching, but that's a part of developing kids in a program to help them become men. And I don't think you can put a price tag on that. I think there is a real value in that. If you're a fan base and your coaches are doing that, man, you got to give them some props on that, because that is basically why you go to college, to better yourself, to become whatever you want to be in your career. And Dave's done a phenomenal job of that.
Yeah, and not only NFL players, but award winners. I mean, Garrett Bradbury, guys like Chris Dunn setting national records. I mean, these guys aren't slouches by any stretch of the imagination. And I guess the point I was trying to make earlier is that, when you watch a Peyton Wilson play, there's no doubt in your mind that he's not the best, if not one of the best players in the country. You don't watch KC Conception play and say, as a freshman, and say he could probably start at Alabama right now as a freshman. If not, he's getting major minutes. He's getting a lot of touches. And so even though some of these guys aren't highly rated, and I do think they're developing these guys, they're still able to locate great talent. I mean, there's a lot of these guys that could play anywhere they wanted. And these are the ones I think that are getting them over the hump, that are getting them to these 9-win seasons, that are beating, some of the teams that might have a little bit more talent, like a Miami, like a North Carolina. So, I mean, they're still getting those guys. There have been so many. Nyheim Hines, he put his foot in the ground and he was gone. I mean, getting a guy like Ryan Finley to transfer in with Eli Drinkwitz, that was huge for Dave Doeren. So they're still getting top-tier talent, whether or not they're highly rated.
Yeah, and I think that's the other part of it too. I'm glad you brought up Peyton, who now is a finalist in all three of the major defensive awards that are out there. That's a great honor for him to be a finalist. I really hope he's able to get one. I'd love for him to win three, but I really think is deserving of one of the awards, if not all three. And I think the year that State has had should help them, because it has just been released, and NC State is currently, let me see if I can find them.
Oh, yeah, at the time of this recording.
They moved up to 19 in the college football playoff standings from 22. Clemson is 23, NC State 19, Louisville is 14. Florida State moves back into the top 4 after their win in Florida. So what that tells me is, okay, if you're NC State and you move ahead of Louisville in the final college football playoff standings, you got a chance to go to the Orange Bowl, particularly if Florida State goes to the college football playoff. So the Orange Bowl will take the highest ranked in the college football playoff rankings ACC team if Florida State moves on to the college football playoff. Otherwise, it would be Florida State going to the Orange Bowl more than likely. But NC State still has an opportunity to go and play in the Orange Bowl. I don't know how far Louisville would drop if they were to lose to Florida State, but I think the fact that they lost to Kentucky, a 6-5 team, and then you lost back another game to Florida State without their starting quarterback, you might have an opportunity for NC State to surpass Louisville and move up with the possibility to go to the Orange Bowl. A lot has to happen, but hey, I was anxious to see how much the gap would be this week in the college football playoff, as last week it was a little wider gap with NC State at 22 and Louisville at number 10.
Yeah, there are a lot of ifs there. Will they even put Florida State in? I don't know. They'll be limping into the playoff if they make it. But I think Louisville's got a pretty strong chance to beat them without Jordan Travis. And you look back now and you think, if we could have beat Louisville, I definitely think State can beat a Florida State team without their quarterback.
Oh yeah, I think they'd had a good chance with their defense.
Yeah, well, the defense gives you a chance, whoever you play.
Every week, State had a chance because of that defense. And, that's the beautiful thing. And you can't say enough about Tony Gibson. I mean, that guy, him coming back after last year, obviously they gave him a big pay raise, but he was worth it. And they might want to dip back into the old coiffer, so to speak, and shell out a little bit more money for Gibby, because he's one of the most respected defensive coordinators and one of the best too, not only at in-game situations, but he makes such quick changes on the sidelines. And a prime example was the UConn game, the very first game of the year. UConn goes right down and scores. Everybody's, oh, God, what happened? Tony Gibson had already figured out what they needed to do to try to contain UConn in their next drives. And it was just a fascinating thing to see. Tony Haynes relayed that story to me as he saw it on the sidelines unfold. So those are the kind of things that you like to see your coaches do, make instant changes that turn out to be successful.
Yes. Well, there's two closing thoughts I want to give to you. There's one thing that I've had on my mind I want to say, and I think this is something that has made this season special that State fans may forget years from now when they look back on this. But when you look at this 5-game winning streak and you look at who they beat, obviously you lose to Duke and you're really at the lowest of lows. Most people said they won't win another game. They're not making a bowl. Okay, so you come back and you beat Clemson. I don't care. And Clemson's actually turning out to have a pretty good year. They could win 9 games and finish ranked themselves. And you're thinking, well, we can carry some momentum into next year. So you beat Clemson at home, which you never do. It's always a great win. Okay. And so then you go and you beat I'm trying to think who was after the Clemson. Miami. There you go. Yeah. Miami at home. Miami, whose offense was what? Top 20, 15 in the country coming into that game. State shuts them down. The offense was still not doing very well at that time, but you found a way. You found a way to win. And that was, I think, the game where they found this identity. It's like, okay, the defense is going to do their job, and the offense, hey, bend, don't break. Just do enough. And then you saw the offensive line start to get better. You saw that, Robert and I really got into his bag a little bit, and he got into his bag of tricks. KC Conception is doing all kinds of things. Okay, but then after that, I thought, I'm sure a lot of State fans thought, okay, this thing's over now. We've got a little bit of hype. We have to go to Wake Forest, where we never win.
Yep.
Then you got to go to Virginia Tech, where we haven't won in a really long time.
That's
and
right.
Beat both of them on their senior day. And they did both of those. And that at Wake Forest, that's a game Dave Doeren never wins. He's done it once.
Right.
And then, you beat them. Wake was not that good, but that's an accomplishment to beat them. It's, as a State fan, you should be happy to win that game.
Absolutely.
You hardly ever, you never really play Virginia Tech, but you beat Virginia Tech.
That's right. That's right. And going into that game at Wake Forest was the week that MJ decides he's done and re-enter Brennan Armstrong. So you're like, okay, we're going into a place where we don't win very often, with a quarterback that kind of struggled in part one. The sequel a lot of times is not as good as the first part, and the first part was it was okay. I'll sit through it and watch it and eat popcorn, but I don't think it was anything that I would suggest my friends to watch. But then all of a sudden the sequel happens, and it's like, holy cow, what a great movie this is. But since 1997, there have been 3 quarterbacks that have won in Winston-Salem: Phillip Rivers, Jacoby Brissett, Brennan Armstrong. Are you really? That's it. That tells you how difficult it is. And you're right. State doesn't play Virginia Tech very often, doesn't play there very often, but it's still, it's like you're playing, looking in a mirror. The programs mirror each other, toughness, physical, great crowds, agricultural school, hands in the dirt. And Dave talked to his team ad nauseum about that. And he even brought Charlie Wiles up before a team meeting, who coached at Virginia Tech for 26 years. And he had Charlie talk to the team about what you're going to see and feel and hear and expect when you play at Virginia Tech. So another great coaching move. And then you get to turn around and host your rival in the all incentive game.
Yes.
Everybody's got massive incentive. That shouldn't be a problem. But as soon as that game started, all the incentive and momentum went toward NC State. And it was one of the more impressive wins over North Carolina in recent memory, because from start to finish, they just totally dominated.
Yes. And I'll tell you another small victory for this year. Dave Doeren, when he beat Miami, that was the one team he had not beaten in his coaching tenure at NC State. So
that's right.
You check off all these boxes. He becomes the winningest coach in NC State history. And it's remarkable. It really is. And then, going into that Carolina game, I think most State fans are thinking, we never win this game. We've got a little bit of hype now. We're starting to pat ourselves on the back. The media believes in us now. There's no way we win this game. But look at all of those games. Your back was against the wall against Duke. All of those were games you don't win. All of them, every single one of them, games you never win. And they pulled it out. And the players deserve all the credit for that, because they went out and executed. But I think it's a testament to who Dave Doeren is as a man, as a coach, the culture he's built, this belief that he instills in these guys. I think it's a testament to Coach Doeren.
It's been wonderful to watch it from a perspective of someone that covers the team, doing Coach Doran's radio shows, having conversations with him and his coaching staff and some players. It's just been amazing to watch it unfold, considering the ebb and flow of the season. And to sit here and you're at 9-3, sole possession of third in the ACC at 6-2, currently ranked in the college football playoff. You're going to a really good bowl. Now, I'll say this too about bowl games now, and we know this has been an issue for quite some time, is, man, you just don't know who's going to be playing. You don't know what your team is going to look like in a bowl game. So, yeah, make that your goal, but bowl games now are used so often, unless they're the upper tier, upper echelon polls or whatever, bowls or whatever. They're usually used as a developmental game. You'll see a lot of players that haven't played much to get an opportunity. They want to see what they can do going into the season. And so, I don't put as much. You want to win your bowl game. I don't want to, diffuse that. But I also know, I don't think you can look at the momentum of what's happened over the last 5 games and think it's going to continue into a bowl game. I just don't know, because hey, everybody could be playing in the bowl game. I don't know. They've already had some players that have entered the transfer portal and say no, but who knows? I mean, and you don't know who you're going to play and who they are going to have who aren't going to be able to play. Heck, the team you're playing may not even have their head coach that was their head coach for the regular season. So that's the wackiness of bowl season that I don't put as much stock into. I think it's great when you win them, but I don't think it's the end of the world if you lose them unless it's for the national championship.
Yeah, there you go. And I don't know. It's probably not likely that Peyton Wilson plays in the bowl game. He's probably the only one that really has that, sort of NFL stock to think about. But I will say this, it would not surprise me if State draws an LSU, which has been projected several times, and they get the chance to play against probably the Heisman Trophy winner. I think that would intrigue someone like Peyton Wilson, who loves to get after a quarterback, which we saw a couple of days ago, an NFL caliber quarterback. And I think if by some chance NC State gets an Orange Bowl bid, I would be very surprised if Peyton didn't play in that game. It'd be the first New Year's Six game in NC State history. It'd be the first time since the Gator Bowl, since they played on New Year's Day. And that would be a big moment for NC State. But regardless, I mean, they're going to have to play a high quality opponent in whatever game they play. It'll be a big game. I'm sure there'll be a lot of red in the stands. If they can find a way to win that 10th game, I think that would be the icing on top, and there would be huge validation there for Dave Doeren. I think from the media and the fan base that he kind of got over that hump. He got that gorilla off his back or the monkey off his back or whatever the saying is.
Yeah. I think Florida is probably a probable destination for NC State, one of 3 places in Florida. So, fans, don't go ahead and book your tickets. That's the one thing that drives me nuts. We used to be able to know sometimes before the end of the regular season or, at least after your last game, that the bowl person comes in with whatever loud colored jacket and says, we would like to invite NC State to the fill in the blank bowl, and people go nuts and go crazy. That doesn't happen anymore. We got to wait for the championships to see how everything unfolds. But NC State has put itself in a really nice position with a number 19 ranking in the college football playoff, and with the momentum that they finished the season with. Yes. I think they would be, and as the Pac fans love to travel to a bowl game, I think that would be a very attractive thing for a bowl to invite NC State. You just can't. That's the other big thing about finishing all alone in third in the ACC. Mm-hmm. You're not tied with anybody. So basically, after Florida State and Louisville, NC State's right there. That's your next pick. So that's what would be interesting if Florida State were to beat Louisville. Would be in the college football playoff. All right. And then if NC State were able to get past Louisville in the college football playoff rankings, then you've got an opportunity there, because Oregon and Washington, right now, Washington has the 3rd spot in the college football playoff, but they're going to play Oregon. And Oregon right now is the number 5 team in the college football playoff. So they could switch. And I don't know what, it's going to be a fascinating championships weekend to see who goes where. And we'll all sit there and hold our breath to see where the Wolfpack goes before we book those tickets.
Yes. And it'll be exciting no matter what. Here's my closing thought, Aaron, and there's another one. I've thought this for a while now. I don't know if you'll agree with me on this. I think you will. For a lot of coaches, I think they're kind of like politicians. They like to portray this idea that they are about the school that they coach at that particular time. Like I'm a Tennessee guy. That's in my blood. I'm an Ohio State guy. And it's rarely the case. You look at like a Roy Williams. There's no doubt in my mind that he was a Carolina guy. Went to Carolina, coached there earlier. He went to every game. He invested his money in North Carolina. He was a Carolina guy. But I don't know that really applies to all coaches. I think it applies to Dave Doeren. I could be wrong, but he does not seem like a BSer to me. He seems like a straightforward, honest guy. And if he didn't enjoy being where he was at, if these weren't his people, I think he would know. I think he would wear it on his sleeve. And you think about what his program is, you talk about hard, tough together. I think that is what NC State fans love. I think that is the culture for the school, for the fan base. He's perfect for NC State, in my opinion. Everything about it's not perfect, but the culture is perfect for NC State. And we've talked about, think about what he's built, this consistent, program at NC State, but I think he's an NC State guy. I think he loves his school. I think he loves his fans. I think he loves his players. I think he's good to his players. And that's not always the case. You have coaches
Right.
that'll promise you everything, and then you get there and that's not the case. And I think he does it the right way. I think he's committed to doing things the right way. And he's not flashy. He's not this, he's not going to be on the Tonight Show by any stretch of the imagination, but you see it when State wins and he's doing his post-game interviews, he's so genuinely happy and he puts his arm around his guys and you can tell that his guys love him. And you think about, when you talk about, guys who you played for in high school and they say, if he walked through that door right now, I'd straighten up, that's Coach so-and-so. And right. I think players feel that way about Coach Doeren. I think he's an NC State guy. I think he's genuinely an NC State guy. And I think
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I think if you were going to cut out a template of a coach that is NC State, it is Dave Doeren. He's a cowboy boot, dungarees, cigar, red Solo cup kind of guy. And, he's not a flash and trash. I think one of the great stories that kind of solidifies the us versus the thems is the recruitment of Peyton Wilson.
Yep.
Peyton was committed to North Carolina. He was his senior year at Orange High in Hillsboro. He's playing in a game on a Friday night. Dave and defensive coordinator Dave Huxtable drive their pickup truck to the game.
Right.
Larry Fedora flies in on the helicopter. Who was Peyton more impressed with? He was more impressed with the dudes that rolled up in the pickup truck. That's his kind of people. And that in his mind was a visualization of, this is what I would be like there. This is what I'd be like here at NC State. And I really think it was a big reason and a big visual reminder of why Peyton Wilson wanted to come to NC State. And you talk about the guy that is a perfect fit for NC State. And I think it was appropriate after Saturday's win over North Carolina. Those two guys found each other pretty quickly after the game to give each other a long hug. Two guys that are NC State leaving the field together. And I couldn't agree with you more that I think Dave Doeren is the NC State prototype for a head coach of football. I don't think you could find it any better.
And I think the word authenticity should be thrown in there too. Cause maybe you are this flashy coach that's a talker and you're all over TV and whatnot. And, you're the guy wearing the chains. And, I think Deion Sanders is who he says he is. I really do.
Yep.
He's that guy.
Agree. That's him.
But that's him. He lives that.
Yep.
But Dave Doeren's not that guy.
No.
But he's authentic. And I think that's why you talk about consistency. I think that's why he's been consistently successful at NC State, because he is who he is. And at the end of the day, he gives it everything he has, and he loves his guys, and they love him back.
And he not only invests in it through the football program this year, he and his wife invested $1.25 million for One Pack Empower, which goes to NC State students with special needs, particularly those on the autism spectrum, which his oldest son Jacob is. But he has seen what those programs can do at other schools that helped his son. He's like, why in the heck don't we have this at NC State? We need to have this. He went to the chancellor and said, we need to have this. And here's the money to start the program. And boom, there it goes. So he's not just a guy who's invested in the football program. He's invested in the university, and he's certainly invested in the community as well.
Yep. And he put his money where his mouth was.
Amen.
He lived it. And so I think that's a great testament to Coach Doeren. We'll close it there because I'm not going to take any more of your time. You're a busy guy. You got babies to kiss and whatnot. But it's been another pleasure having you on, Mr. Gravley. Always a pleasure talking to you. It's been a great year for NC State, but it's been a great year for sports. It's been a great year for college football. I mean, you look around all over the country. There's so many great stories, and it's been a great several years for NC State athletics. You're a part of that now. You're part of that family, and you get to tell those stories. You get that great job. So there's a lot to be excited about.
Certainly is. And we're about a week away from unveiling the David Thompson statue at Reynolds Coliseum. That's going to be a phenomenal event. Just had the women's cross country team win their third national championship. So yeah, there's a lot to be proud of at this university in the athletics program. That's something that Coach Doeren, Coach Keats, Coach Moore. I mean, look at Coach Moore with 2 top 5 wins, and now they're in the top 5. Didn't even get a preseason ranking in the AP poll and was picked 8th in the ACC. It ain't where you pick. It's what you do once the season starts. And Westmore has certainly gotten off to a great start this year. So, hey, people can have their preseason polls. You can have your recruiting rankings, but I'm all about how do you develop people in your program and how do you develop your program? I think that's how you decide whether a program and whether a coaching staff is successful or not. Plus, can you win championships? And no one knows that more than Dave Doeren, and no one wants to win a championship more than Dave Doeren.
And you talk about a consistent winner, a guy who's underappreciated. I think I smell a part 2 coming on here. Wes Moore, he deserves an episode of his own.
No doubt about it.
My goodness. But
he is a very unique guy. He is also, I think, cut from the cloak of NC State.
Yes.
You know, he's a Texan. He's a Dallas Cowboy guy. But let me tell you, he fits right into the Wolfpack Nation.
And he's another guy. He's not flashy.
Nope.
But you know what? He gets top tier talent. He wins games. He wins championships. And I think, he was a KL guy. He's one of us. But, he's an NC State guy for sure. There's no doubt about that. Well, Jeff Gravley, thank you so much for coming on again. It's always a pleasure having you on. We appreciate it. Wishing you the very best of luck moving forward. We'll have you on again soon. It's always great having you.
Thanks, Kagan. Appreciate your time, buddy.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around and watching with us yet again, folks. Another great episode, another great talk with Jeff Gravley. So appreciative of him coming on. And a huge thank you, as always, to Mr. J.R. Quitman, the former Wolfpack football player who makes this thing look so pretty and produces this podcast for us. So a huge thank you to J.R. as always. Let us know what you think in the comments about what we had to say today. And be sure to like and subscribe as well. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.